Welcome to the live. I got my incense burning. This always looks fuzzy to me. Hold on. Let me clear that up a little bit. Okay, what's up, folks? Make sure I got this. All right. I always think I'm ready, and then there's always something else. What's going on, Sutton? There's always something else I got to fix. I got my incense burning, and I got my tea. I'm drinking turmeric and ashwagandha. I can never say that word. Ashwagandha. Anyway, if I see it, I can say it. Babes in the house. So I am on YouTube and Instagram. So I'll be bouncing back and forth. I don't like this light over here. We're just going to leave it on. What's going on, folks? What's going on, folks? Glad that y'all are here. I have something in my tooth. I think I have something in my tooth. Oh, okay. I might have something in my tooth. I knew one of those. All right. All right. So I'm actually doing a live today versus tomorrow. Usually I go live on Wednesdays, but Wednesday, baby's in town, and I won't have time to do the live tomorrow. And Thursday, I'm actually teaching our first masterclass in the Thrive community on Thursday. So I won't be able to do it on Thursday. And then Friday is my birthday. Shout outs to the Libras. It's Libra season, you know what I'm saying? And then next week is our retreat. So it's just been a very busy week. So, but I didn't want to go a whole entire week without connecting with y'all. So I'm still here doing the live. And it'll be a little bit different tonight. I actually have some questions I'm going to answer. And we'll get started in a minute. Grab a drink. Yes, feliz cumpleaños. You know what I'm saying? I'm a little Spanish. Also, you know, if you are not part of the Thrive newsletter, I believe I'll be sending one out tomorrow. Make sure you join the Thrive newsletter and just keep in touch. You know, more conversations happen offline than they actually do online, just so you know. You're welcome, Sutton. I love going live, even though, anyway, I won't go down the introvert rabbit hole. But yeah, keep the conversations going on the Thrive newsletter once a month. I'm also thinking of sending out maybe newsletters twice a month, but I have to check my capacity. And also, I do have my 125 self-reflection questions, life-changing self-reflection questions. So if you want to go deeper, it's free. It's a link in my bio. Grab it. Let me know what you think. And then we're about to get started. Let me wet my palate a little bit. But yeah, so I'm going to answer some of these questions. And you know what's interesting about some of these questions is that they're not your typical Q&A questions. I don't know if there's any such thing as a typical Q&A questions, but sometimes I get questions from folks where it feels more like people are venting or expressing frustration than actually asking a question. But there's still stuff there that we can unpack, right? What's going on, Heavenly? And so, and you might be wondering like why that is. And I think often it's because emotions, you know, they're tricky and they're layered. And when we're overwhelmed by our own emotions, what we find is that it's very hard to ask really clear questions. And when we ask some of the questions from a place of overwhelm, it can be really more like a cry for help. What's going on, Voss? Than a clear question. And what I'm finding is that this quote came to mind, and it's by Tony Robbins. I shared it in my story, actually. that says that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your questions. And I want to break that down a little bit before we get started on answering some of these questions, because I think it's so important that we just learn to ask more just in-depth questions. And when we say that, because one of the things my partner always asks is like, are you connected to what you're saying? And sometimes I have to think that, because I'm very much a person that's like in my head, and I have to be very conscious about that. I'm not coming from my head all the time, because I tend to do that. And for folks who are very much in their heads, the invitation is to come from the heart. And what happens is that, like, if we're not connected to the question that we're asking, like we don't know why we're asking, it's going to be very hard for us to get the answers that we're going to need to sort of transform our lives. And the quality of your questions really depends, obviously, on the nature of the question, but more importantly, the depth of the question, right? The question, whether it's a question about yourself or the world around you, or even other folks. And when we talk about the quality of the question, we want to think about like the quality of life, right? So the quality of your life. And that doesn't mean like, typical like having things, but really like, do I have peace in my life? Do I have joy? Do I feel fulfilled? That sort of things. And then the quality of the questions, again, depends on the depth, right? Are they deep questions? Are they meaningful questions? Or are they just sort of hanging at the superficial level? And so the idea is for you to learn to ask more, thought-provoking questions, because when you ask those kinds of questions, you're more likely to make better decisions. You're more likely to understand yourself at a much deeper level, because I feel like some of the confusion that you might be experiencing is because we're just not clear in the question, right? Once we get clear on the question, the clarity comes really, really quickly. And when you are able to do all of that, you can live a very meaningful life. But on the other hand, if you don't really think about or feel into the questions that you're asking, meaning if it's a bit shallow, no judgment, but if it lacks depth, or you didn't really reflect on the question itself, you really might find it very challenging to navigate the complexities of life, and to also discover your true self, your aspirations, and the things that you want to create in your life. And that can make you feel lost, right? And very unsatisfied with your life. So, the invitation here is to ask more powerful questions. And I say ask the kind of questions that you might be a little nervous to actually know the answer to. Because the more that you do that, again, the clearer life becomes and the more fulfilling life gets. And so it's just really a reminder to be curious and reflective on how you question things, right? But what I find is that, and I'm not exempt from this either, right? But what I find is that many folks go through life reacting, then responding. And what I mean by this is that when we're in a reactive state, means we don't leave a lot of room for self-reflection. And so if you think about, a lot of us are just really go, 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 or really reacting and responding to life all the time. And, I'm somebody who, I can be impulsive. I'm a Libra. And I'm recognizing that I need to tame my impulsivity down. My impulsivity usually goes around like making purchases, or just feeling the need. Like I get really swept up into my own emotions that I just react. And I'm just reacting to something that happened versus taking the time to really be a bit reflective. And so when we're in a constant state of reactivity, it's going to be hard to get clear on what those questions are for ourselves. And when we're constantly responding to life, right? We don't really know how we truly feel about something, right? What's going on, Lily? And, I get it. A lot of people, like I have somebody in the community right now, in my Thrive community, is like, they're not really into journaling. They don't want to do those things, but, find other activities that allow you to be a bit introspective, because it's really so, so important to have some space to create mental and emotional space for your internal world. And what I mean by that is finding moments to get quiet, right? Stepping away from social media and really getting rid of a lot of the distractions, because it's through that space that we are going to gain clarity, that those questions are going to pop up, and that we'll be able to connect about a lot deeper through our self-awareness. Because, it's honestly, it's really hard to reflect when life is always in the driver's seat, right? Like things are always happening to you, where you're being steered versus you doing the steering. So if life is feeling like that, that means that there needs to be a bit of space. And that could be space from work, space from people, but just space to be with yourself so that that clarity can come about. And again, you can use my self-reflection guide to get started on some of that. But we're going to get started with the first question, which actually isn't a question. I get this a lot. The question is, the statement is, I feel stuck and trying to break free. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. I've definitely had that experience in my life. I mean, some moments where I still feel sort of stuck, right? And I have to navigate those feelings as well. And so I get this question a lot, and people are usually unsure what their next step needs to be. And I like to say that feeling stuck isn't a negative thing. Like, we can sometimes get shamed for being stuck, from other people who, what it seems like their life is progressing in some shape or form. But I don't see it as something that's negative. I feel like it's a very powerful signal. Like it really tells you that you are having this really deep desire for change, and you're longing to sort of break away from a life that no longer serves you. And so in essence, feeling stuck is that feedback telling you that something needs to shift. So I think it's beautiful. And there are two ways that you can approach this sort of feeling if this is something that you're experiencing. But the first thing is leading with curiosity. This is something I encourage all my clients to do, is to lead with curiosity, because, when you're curious about something, what feeling do you get when you're curious, right? You kind of like feel excited, you feel like interested, and you kind of want to know more, right? You feel pulled versus withdrawing, right? And so being curious feels better than blame and shame. And so it's really very challenging to uncover the root cause of feeling stuck when you approach it with frustration, self-blame, or negative self-talk. Like it's really hard to get clear if you're coming from that space. What's going on, KB? So first, try to pinpoint where you feel stuck. Is it your job? Is it your relationships, right? Are you noticing any common themes or patterns that are going on for you? For example, does this feeling of stuckness come about in certain times of the year? Does it come about when there's certain triggers or, when you think about certain things? So get curious, right? I always say that feeling stuck is really this feeling that you're out of alignment. It just means that you're out of alignment with yourself. And it means that you're probably doing something that is totally not something that is in alignment with yourself, essentially. So it often occurs when there's an aspect of your life that you're not really being completely transparent about. And that might involve like how you genuinely feel about something or someone, or how something or someone is affecting you. For instance, I hated my job and I felt very stuck there at one point. Like I was swept up in the days, and then the days turned to months, and the months turned to years. And then 6.5 years later, I felt like the whole world was suffocating me, and I was very unhappy, depressed, anxious, all of the things. And I had to get honest. What's going on, goddess? I had to get honest with my circumstances, because it's through that honesty that change can happen. And sometimes we're feeling stuck because we're not being honest with ourselves about certain aspects of our lives. And I had to say to myself, hey, Fran, you paid a lot of money for this degree, but you ain't happy, right? You might have to walk away from this degree. And I had to come to terms with that with a lot of humility. And so you might have to walk away from something, right? And so when I was thinking of walking away, I had to literally, look at my resources and my abilities to be able to do that and come from a place of pure transparency. And so we might feel stuck because of what we're afraid to see. We're afraid to look under the hood, so to speak. And so the question for you is, what are you afraid to walk away from? And if you walked away from that thing, how would it make you look? Because sometimes we care more about our social status than our happiness. And if we're really busy caring about what other people think, we're going to feel stuck for a very long time. So we have to move past that if we want to get out of that stuckness feeling. And this brings me to my next approach, which is taking action. I thought about this. I was like, I'll use this metaphor. It's kind of like a nasty metaphor. If Lily's still on, she likes talking about poop. But, when your toilet is clogged, what do you do? Do you leave it clogged and then continue using it? I know it's kind of nasty, right? It's a nasty comparison, but it's just a visual of like how stuck you might be feeling in your life. But you don't leave it clogged, right? You take action, you grab the plunger and you unclog it, right? And so it's kind of like a metaphor for life. So many of you might be feeling stuck in relationships and jobs, and you're sitting in that stuckness. Oh, my battery for my light turned off. See, all right. I think it's still good. Anyway, many of you might be feeling stuck in your relationships and your jobs. And yeah, Lily heard the call. And you're sitting in that stuckness. And part of sitting in that stuckness is that you are feeling a sense of powerlessness. So when you are feeling stuck, taking action means that you're reclaiming your power. Poop jokes aren't my number one jokes, but they sure are my number two. I can't. One thing about me is I love a bad pun. I love it. And I love a bad joke. I love it. And Lily's full of bad jokes. So taking action is really all about reclaiming your power. So for relationships, if that's where you're stuck, this could mean having a tough but necessary conversation or coming to terms with certain realities of the situation, right? When it comes to your job, you might need to start asking for the things that you need. And if you're not getting them, then it's time to create an exit strategy. We often don't realize, like, when we finally walk away from a situation and we look back, we're like, I really didn't need to stay as long as I did. I didn't really need to be there as long as I was, because the stories and the narratives that we make up in our heads is way worse than the actual reality. And so if you're feeling if you're feeling stuck in, I know Lily's going to have a joke for that, but if you're feeling stuck in a certain place or situation, reflect on what's keeping you there. There's got to be a benefit to being there, right? When I was at my job and wanting to quit and thinking about quitting over the years, the benefit was, first of all, I really liked the kids that I worked with. So I felt really guilty. She said, that's what she said. I felt really guilty to leave. And then the other trade-off was I love the flexibility of being able to not always be in an office. And I just didn't want to go back into like an office type of setting. So there are trade-offs to being stuck. But the question is, are those trade-offs as big, right? Because if I just stayed for the job while my mental health was at a serious decline just because I felt guilty leaving, the kids that I was working with at the expense of my health, like I couldn't do that anymore. So sometimes some things are going to take the gamut. Some things are going to be a lot more important than being stuck in that situation. So get clear on what's keeping you there, because there are lots of excuses. We have lots of excuses that's going to validate the feelings of being stuck. And I'm not saying they're not valid. They can pretty well be very valid and very real. But it's also important to shift from your perspective of like looking at obstacles and start looking more at solutions. Okay. Again, feeling stuck, I feel like, it's a beautiful opportunity to really just dig deep and feel more empowered in your life. Feeling stuck is asking you to take the reins. That's all it's saying. It's like someone else has been driving for a long time. And I'm just waiting for you to step up to the plate. And that's all it is. Okay. All right. So this next question, it's an interesting question. It's a travel question. So it's going to be fun to answer because, hey, I'm biased. So here we go. Oh, it's not a question, actually. I don't want to follow my dreams of traveling for fear I'm going to run out of money. Okay. Let's talk about that. I'm going to go from the surface to the deep. So I'm not sure what the age of this person is who made this statement, because, age can influence the decision. And, running out of money is a real thing. It does happen. I remember being in Bangkok, seeing the expats literally on the street sitting, selling their photos, their travel photos, because they ran out of money. So yeah, it's a real thing. No shade. It's a real thing. So my first initial superficial question is like, how do you manage your finances, right? Reflecting on your financial situation, but I feel like if you live in the United States of America and you still have a roof over your head, you'll be okay overseas. It's very possible to find a place and travel within your budget, but this might require you to adjust your lifestyle. So is that something that you're willing to do? When I went overseas, my focus really obviously was to travel, but to travel with a purpose. So I taught English abroad, and that allowed me to earn money and teach and have vacation time to travel. So depending on how old you are, whoever asked this question or made this statement, that's something you could do temporarily. And there's lots of opportunities overseas. People don't realize that you can work in different industries, and you can actually create your own thing while you're there and service and cater to the expat community as well. One of the things I always needed while I was traveling was someone to do my hair. I could never find someone to do my hair. So that's a real thing. I remember meeting somebody in Thailand actually who worked in a marketing firm in Thailand for a Thai company. So jobs overseas come in many forms. It's just a matter of researching and exploring opportunities, because what we're doing here, we're looking at the obstacle versus a solution, right? But if you run out of money, you could always go home. I mean, I'm not sure what your living situation is, if that's even a possibility, but for me, I'm lucky that my cousin has a house here, so I could always just come back and chill out here if I need to. But depending on your current living situation, you could always go home. Like if overseas traveling doesn't work out, you can go home. But if money is a major issue, budget, save, find someone who's really good at it to help you. Help you create a financial plan. My partner helped me a few years ago, and it was life-changing. Okay. But here's the caveat though, because often we're waiting for the perfect financial safety net, right? That will make you 100% comfortable to do this thing. If you're waiting for that, you're going to be waiting a long time. Okay. You're going to delay that travel, because what you're actually waiting for, you're just trying to soothe your anxieties about making this decision. And what does this decision mean for you if you actually make this decision? So there might be, this question seems a bit more layered. Remember, we're never going to be 100% ready for anything ever at all, like never. So don't wait till you have like $1 gazillion to travel or to move or to do all these things. And, I feel like this question, you can dig a little bit deeper in this question, because to me, I sense a theme of scarcity, like a scarcity mindset, like what's going on underneath that. Also, are there other underlying fears? Like I said earlier, if you make this decision, because when you make decisions like this, especially if you are the only person in your group, family, making these wild ass decisions, they're gonna look at you a little weird. And some people might not be able to sit with that kind of scrutiny. So that might be a reason why you haven't did the thing yet. Also, there might be a lack of trust within yourself. Like, do I trust myself Do I feel like I have the ability to actually do this thing, this wild and crazy thing? So there might be a confidence thing there. You might be afraid to travel by yourself. So this is a surface level question. So I just encourage you to go a little bit deeper, because often those surface level questions, they hide a deeper emotional concern that needs a bit more exploration. Okay. We got 2 more questions. Just I'm doing 4 only tonight. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll check the YouTube. Yeah. Drop them in the chat or send me a DM or email me, and I'll do these more often. I do have some more that I've been meaning to do, so it'll inspire me to get going on the questions. All right. Number 3 is, oh, I love this. I love talking about this because it's just crap. It's all crap. Bringing back the poop. What if I fail? What's my alternative? What if I fail? Beautiful. Fail away. I love this question. I do, because it's like, it's just crap, you know? So here's the alternative. Let's start with the alternative. The alternative of failure is, you want to guess? Staying exactly where you are right now. Okay. The alternative to failure is being in the same place 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. So if this is where you're at, if you're thinking about failure, take a moment to think about where you are right now and then feel into how that makes you feel. Okay. Then ask yourself if you want to feel that same way in the years to come. That is the alternative. The alternative isn't if I do the thing and don't work. If you do the thing, you'll learn something, right? The alternative is being exactly where you are. One of my all-time favorite quotes that I always love to mention is, mistakes are proof that you're trying. I love that quote, because if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not living. Okay. We've been conditioned so much. The programming runs deep, y'all. We've been conditioned so much by like school systems, our caregivers, parents, or what have you, that we need to view failure as something that's negative. And the programming is deep because we really allow that perspective to consume our lives. And we have to undo that, because guess what? The school system isn't life. A lot of our parents, before I say that, well, the school system isn't life, and school is not designed for us. It's not prepared us to live life. Like, the school system does not prepare you for life. And I'm sorry, but a lot of our parents, they're not really living either. Okay. And it's no shade to them. It's just different, right? It's just different cultural narratives, different generation, different values. They're not living life either. Right. And so I'll give a bit of a shallow example. When I got into real estate, I got my real estate license years ago. It didn't teach me how to sell real estate. Okay. It didn't teach me how to build connections with clients. I had to actually venture out into the real world, learn how to conduct real estate transactions, build relationships, and everything else that comes with it. That test did not teach me a damn thing. So if you're out there in the real world, making decisions, getting feedback, and growing, if you're not out there doing that, then you're not living. Okay. So part of this journey is really, the question is not, what if I fail? The question really is, what are the feelings underneath that failure? The question is, when did you first feel like a failure? Can you trace that all the way back to your earliest moments? And then ask yourself, maybe who said that? When did you first hear that? And when you feel into the word failure, who do you see? What voice do you hear in your head? Because the real battle isn't out there. Okay. The real battle is right in here in your internal world. Got nothing to do with anyone else out there. So you just got to deprogram some of the things that you heard, some of the things that were said to you, because it wasn't true. right? If I were talking to a client, I would say fail as much as you can, fail as fast as you can, embrace those mistakes, learn from them, connect to mentors, guides, and like-minded souls who are also on a similar path, because that will help inspire you, help encourage you, and just get out there and start living the hell out of life. Life is meant to be lived, not to be in a box. Okay. So live your life, child. All right. Last question. Oh, this is interesting. How do I know my worth and contribution? I always want to say contribution, contribution from within me, not what others say or relegate me to. It's a powerful question because I feel like a lot of us get stuck here. The external validation, the comparison, all that stuff. And so the first question I have for this person, if this is something that you are experiencing, I always ask, like, who's in your head, right? Because that question doesn't come from you. Those feelings don't come from your original self, right? The reason that this person, whomever, might be disconnected from their self-worth is because someone long time ago implanted some falsehoods into them. Now they believe that is true. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. And usually it's from someone who is projecting their own pain and struggle with their own worthiness, that felt that they needed to make you feel small so that they could feel big, right? It's usually like a parent or a caregiver or somebody. And so the theme around this question really is low self-esteem, falling into the comparison trap, like I mentioned earlier, lack of self-acceptance, lack of self-compassion, and lots of self-criticism. So knowing your worth and contribution to this world, I can never say that word, contribution comes from within yourself, okay? It's very much independent of external opinions or judgments of others. So it's really about digging deeper to find the root or the source of your lack of worthiness. And to know yourself is not to spend time looking out there, right? But to spend time with yourself and getting in touch with your inner world. And the seeking validation comes from the outside world. When you're seeking validation, it really comes from that narrative of the wounded inner child. And I love talking about the wounded inner child. That's actually the masterclass that I'm going to be having in the Thrive community this Thursday. Excuse me. I ain't going to say it. Lily might be there. Excuse me. Yeah, because everything begins and ends with inner child. Excuse me. Everything begins and ends with inner child. You can trace it all back. And if you can heal the inner child and reparent yourself, it's really more than half the battle. And so when you continue to look outside of yourself for validation, you already know that is an endless wheel of disappointment. Okay. So this is really a moment. If this is a question for you, this is a moment for you to love on yourself. So take some time to reflect on some of your strengths, your skills, your values, and what really truly matters to you. You got to drown out the noise, right? Everybody's got an opinion. Everyone is an expert in something, okay? Just drown out all the BS noise and consider begin to focus on the things that light you up, focus on doing more on the things that bring you joy, and focus on being in spaces that counter some of that energy, okay? Because remember, Source, the creator, didn't create us without our own uniqueness, okay? Everyone comes with a set of unique qualities that no one else embodies. It's just, we all have our own personal blueprint. And so part of this journey is for you to discover that for yourself, right? To take off all of the masks and also being willing to do this with courage and vulnerability, and to seek that part of yourself out, regardless of what the outside world says or thinks. It really takes, what quote? I can't remember the quote that says, but like, I don't know if it's Ralph Waldo Emerson, but like, it takes courage to really be yourself in the world, that's really trying so hard to for you to be something or someone else. I can't remember the exact quote, but I would also encourage, like, find a community, build a supportive network of friends or loved ones, somebody who appreciates your uniqueness, because your tribe is out there. Listen, there's somebody for everybody. And I say this for relationships, but also friendships. And also, most importantly, limit your exposure to some of the toxic or negative influences. Because if you are around people who are contributing to this lack of worthiness, you might have to distance yourself from them. You know what I'm saying? Just get away a little bit. Okay. And just keep in mind, like, your worth, it's all about you. Okay. Not what others say or do. It's not determined by external factors. All right. Or other people's opinions, because you have to understand, everyone is in a different level of consciousness. I always say this, everyone is a different level of consciousness. So they're projecting that level of consciousness. Right. And so they're also projecting their insecurities. They're also projecting their own fears. They're also projecting their own unresolved traumas, all of those things. And so we assume that people have it together when really a lot of people are just figuring stuff out. So their perspective or their opinions and judgments are not more important than your own. So just keep that in mind, and recognize that you have your own intrinsic value and you are a unique soul. So begin to embrace that. I would say try not to focus on contribution, because sometimes we're like, oh, I want to contribute to the world. I want to give something. I want to give my gift to the world and all that stuff. And that sounds, I've been listening to Ram Dass a lot lately, and he says we'd like to romanticize our lives a lot, but it sounds amazing, like beautiful that you want to contribute, but focus on the self-discovery. The contribution will come later when your sense of self is more grounded and more intact. Okay. It's hard to contribute to a world when we really don't know who we are, and we don't know what we're stand for. We're not clear on our values, and we don't have a sense of balance within ourselves. That comes first. It goes back to, like, people really working hard to, like, save the world when they're just got a lot of stuff going on here that's not balanced yet. And doesn't mean that you can't, like, volunteer, give back, but don't make that your entire focus until you get really clear about who you are. Okay. Let me see here. I think that's all the questions that I had. I really appreciate y'all watching and hanging out with me on a Tuesday evening. But yeah, I hope these questions were helpful for some folks who may be in similar situations or have been thinking similar things or feeling similar feelings. And I hope you got something out of it. And I really appreciate y'all hanging out with me. I'll be back next week. Maybe, most likely, I'll be back on a Wednesday. Yeah, I travel on next Tuesday, but I should be able to go live on next Wednesday. And I'll be going live from the Dominican. Okay. But again, keep in touch with my Thrive newsletter. And if you would like to go deeper, check out the self-reflection questions. It's free, link in my bio, or just email me. I can send you a link. And that's pretty much it. Well, thank you, y'all. And I will see y'all next time. Okay. Have a good evening and take care.